You talk about a dream come true. In those days, when there was a TV game, Scully would do the first three innings simulcast, then he would do the last six on television, and generally at that point, Charlie Steiner would do the radio. But this one occasion, I got to do the play-by-play.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. It's an honor to be speaking with an Emmy Award-winning writer, author, producer, actor, and radio personality, as well as the host of the podcast Hollywood and Levine. Ken Levine, thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Tell us about growing up in Southern California and what inspired you to get into entertainment.
Well, I think originally, when I was 8 years old, the Dodgers came to town, and I got a chance to hear Vin Scully. And at the time, all kids want to be baseball players, and you reach a certain age and realize that you just don't have the skill to make it to the majors. And for me, that was like 7. But when I heard Vin Scully, I thought, man, this is great. You get to travel with the team. You get to go to exotic locales like St. Louis and Pittsburgh, and someone else pays for it. This is the job for me. So I was originally interested in radio and baseball announcing, and then Top 40 Radio emerged, KFWB and KRLA in LA, and I just became enamored by radio, and especially the disc jockeys who were funny, like Gary Owens and Loman and Barkley and Dick Whittington. I just fell in love with radio.
Yeah, in fact, Gary Owens I got to work with many years ago at the Music of Your Life radio network, and just one of the friendliest guys ever, and even got to meet sweet Dick Whittington back in the day, and great personalities. And when the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles in 1958, how many games did you attend that first season?
Oh, I was just a kid, so I think I attended like maybe 2.
What was it like being there at the Coliseum? Because it's a completely different atmosphere than Dodger Stadium.
Oh God, the Coliseum was the thing about the Coliseum is it was so big, and it was hard to see through most vantage points. And this was the era of transistor radios coming into fashion. And so people would bring their radios to listen to Vin Scully just so that they could see what was going on, because a lot of those seats were in a different time zone than the field. So that became part of a thing. You would go to a Dodger game, and it was almost like Vin Scully was on the PA system. You would hear his voice from every other seat in the stadium.
That's great. And as a kid, how many Dodger players did you get to meet? Because these days,
none.
Wow,
None. At the time, no, none.
I guess the opportunities or the not adventures, but promotions and appearances weren't as big as they are today.
Right. And it would have been great to meet the players, but I wanted to meet Vin Scully, really, to be honest.
When did you finally get to meet Vin?
I met him in like 1969. At the time, I was a sports intern at KMPC Radio in Los Angeles. They did the Rams and the Angels and UCLA Bruins, but KFI did the Dodgers. But I was able through KMPC to get a press pass one night to go to the press box at Dodger Stadium, and I bumped into Vin Scully before the game, and I introduced myself, and I said, would it be possible to come into the booth and watch you announce the game for a little while? And he says, well, I don't know why you want to just, watch some guy talking, but okay. He said, come in the fourth inning. And Scully would announce every inning except the third and the seventh. And Jerry Doggett used to broadcast those innings. And so I couldn't wait till the fourth inning. I was like, quick, make outs, get out. And so between the third and fourth inning, I go to the booth, and Jerry throws it to Vin. Let's go to the fourth inning, and here again is Vin, and he gets up to leave, and Scully turns back and he sees me, and he motions to the chair. So I go and I sit in Jerry's chair, and it's like, oh my God. I'm sitting next to Vin Scully in the Dodger Stadium press box, watching him announce the game. And there was a close play at the plate where someone was thrown out at the plate, and he had one of those classic Scully calls, and he is out at the plate. And I mean, it was like almost having my first orgasm. I mean, it was like unbelievable. So that was my first opportunity to meet Vin. And then years later, when I got to do play-by-play, I got a chance to meet him in spring training, on a couple of occasions. And a few years after that, when I was hosting Dodger Talk, I obviously got a chance to meet him and see him practically every day. And I would be in the press box, and Vin would walk by, and he would go, "Hi, Kenny." And for me, it was like, oh my God, the prettiest girl in school knows my name. And then I got to do a couple of fill-in broadcasts for the Dodgers. And you talk about a dream come true. In those days, when there was a TV game, Scully would do the first 3 innings simulcast. Then he would do the last 6 on television, and generally at that point, Charlie Steiner would do the radio. Mm-hmm. But this one occasion, I got to do the play-by-play. And how many people can say that they announced Dodger baseball on the radio with Vin Scully?
Oh, yeah.
And I still have the sign off when he signs off and passes it on to me, and now, ladies and gentlemen, and now for more play-by-play, here's Ken Levine. Like, oh my God, this is the greatest. So that was truly, if you ask me, my one single highlight in 50 years of broadcasting, it would be that day calling the game with Vin Scully.
Yeah, unfortunately, I never got to meet Vinny. I got to meet Ross Porter about 9 years ago, very friendly, and he was talking about how he and Vinny always talk at least a couple times a month. And I was disappointed when the previous Dodger ownership let go of Ross Porter after 27 years, but he was. I just couldn't believe it.
Me too. Like you said, very good guy, and Ross was still doing the play-by-play the first time I did Dodger Talk, which was in the mid-90s. And then, the new ownership came in and replaced him.
What's interesting about Ross Porter, I remember seeing a TV guide from 1970, and he was the sportscaster at the time on CNBC News Service 4. And, of course, around that time, Vin Scully was on NBC with a game show that lasted about a year called It Takes Two. And so he was like, Vin was just everywhere, it seemed. I'm thinking to myself, did this guy ever take a break?
Yeah, he was pretty busy. He also had short-lived Vin Scully show,
Hmm.
which was on CBS, which was like half-hour variety talk show. Um, and he also hosted, along with Elizabeth Montgomery, the 1967 Rose Parade.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you watch that, by the way?
Yes, I did. I found out, he told me the story afterwards. He said that they had agreed to do it, and they show up that morning, and their vantage point, they had erected like a tower, and you had to climb a ladder to get up to the tower. And Elizabeth Montgomery was kind of freaked out
Mm.
and was like totally in fear of ladders. So Scully said, "All right, well, wrap your arms and legs around me and I'll get you up and down the ladder." So she did. She wrapped herself tightly around Vin Scully, and he went up and down the ladder with her. And I said to him, "Oh my God." I said, "Of all the perfect games and no hitters and everything else you called," I said, "that would have been my greatest highlight."
Wow. Yeah, I heard about those ladders were just crazy at the Rose Parade back in the day. I wonder if that episode or that broadcast with Vin and Elizabeth is still around anywhere. Do you know for a chance?
No idea.
Mm.
No idea.
Well, that's one of the biggest shames about those classic broadcasts is oftentimes they got taped over because color tape was really expensive back then. Of course, now they save it, but back then, unfortunately, they didn't, unless somebody was recording off of their tape machine back in the day.
Very true.
Well, tell us also about, since baseball was your first love, how you first got into top 40 radio back in the early 1970s.
Well, like I said, I was a big fan of KFWB. Not so much KRLA, but if they had a great disc jockey like Emperor Bob Hudson, like I said, I liked funny disc jockeys,
Mm-hmm.
then I would listen to KRLA. But in 1965, KHJ burst upon the scene with Boss Radio, and I was mesmerized. I thought, and I still do, that it was just the greatest radio station ever. And the minute I heard it, quick, that 93 KHJ a cappella jingle,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, what the hell was that? Because at the time, jingles were usually these long 10, 15-second, heavily orchestrated little songs. But all of a sudden, these jingles are like popping on, and they're like 2 seconds and 3 seconds. And the disc jockey was talking over the record and moving it forward. And there was like a momentum to this station. It was like, wow, this is great. And, then I heard the real Don Steele and Robert W. Morgan. And it's like, this is the greatest station ever. So I became totally enamored by KHJ. I wanted to be a KHJ boss jock more than anything in the world. And that's what really launched my hyper interest in top 40 radio. And it was the late 60s, and the music of that era was so fantastic. And being in LA, which was like the center of it, with the Doors and the Byrds and the whole Laurel Canyon scene and Buffalo Springfield and Mamas and Papas. It was a magic time to be in LA. We had the Beach Boys, and we had Sonny and Cher, and the Grassroots and the Association, and they were all local product. And then I attended UCLA starting in 1968, and they had a campus radio station, KLA.
Mm-hmm.
And I found my way to KLA, and it's like, oh my God, here's other nerds who care about this stuff. Because I'd be in high school and KHJ would have a new jock or a new promotion or a new jingle, and I'd be all excited about it, and no one else gave a shit, you know. Hey man, have you heard the new KHJ Jet Set contest? Wow, like, oh, fuck.
Or the Big Kahuna.
Yeah, really? Okay, yeah, I listen. It's fun. It's, I like the music. They play a lot of Beatles songs and everything, and Reeled on Steel's kind of fun, but no, I don't give a crap. Well, these people gave a crap. These people knew who Bill Drake was, and they knew who Ron Jacobs was, the program director. And it's like, these are my peeps. So I was doing shows there, and they ran a very top 40 oriented station at the time. And we had a lot of people who went on to have radio careers or careers in entertainment.
We're talking with Emmy Award-winning writer, author, director, and radio personality Ken Levine. And next time we'll find out who some of those famous people were and are.